Night has fallen, and the trees loom high above you. Although the moon is bright and the sky is clear, the darkness seems to be surrounding and engulfing you. The whispers begin to echo around the forest, further instilling a deep fear within you. You are lost. You are afraid. Do you run or try to wait out the dawn? Both options seem equally futile. It is a familiar scenario that has been witnessed on screen and in print for decades. Being lost and alone in a dark forest at night. Is it our imagination and too much TV that has given us the foreboding feeling of such places? Or is it something else that instills this fear within us? Are there supernatural forces and creatures within the forests of Wales and indeed the world that your most terrifying nightmares could never conjure up? Welcome to the Dark Wales Tours podcast with me, Matthew Rose. Woodlands, forests and trees in general have played an important part in Welsh mythology and also many other cultures around the world. Our ancestors believed deeply in the power and magic that trees can yield. Even today, the benefits of plants and trees around the world play an important part in medicine and scientific developments alike. We have also, throughout the centuries, believed that certain trees and their properties could protect us not just from ailments to the body, but by actually repelling evil spirits and entities, stopping them from entering our homes. The yew tree was regarded as a sacred tree in many cultures around the world, including Wales, and there are countless powers and beliefs attributed to it. The longevity of the yew, for example, some in existence for over 1,000 years, meant it was seen as a sign of everlasting life, and branches were often placed in the coffins or graves of the deceased to protect the soul in its journey after death. The versatility of the yew also meant that it was often used in many other ways, including the crafting of weapons.
Throughout Wales, Scotland and England, rowan trees were often planted in churchyards and outside people's homes, as the berries were thought to have the power to keep away spirits of the dead. Similarly, the sprigs of the rowan were also twisted and crafted and strategically placed around doorways for further protection against unnatural forces intruding.
The beliefs and superstitions attached to trees around the world are almost countless, but it is often what people experience lurking amongst these wooded areas that keeps us up at night. Our ancestors believed the forests were the place where the spirits of the dead would go to live. This belief has trickled down throughout the centuries, and even today there are some forests and woods that are considered very haunted places. Pembrey Country Park and its surrounding woodland in Carmarthenshire, West Wales, has been described as one of the most haunted locations in Wales, with many reports, sightings and feelings of very strange things within the area. The area has a long and at times very dark history, and it played an important part in both world wars, as the area held one of many factories producing explosives and other munitions in support of the war effort. The secluded area meant it was the ideal spot, with the sandbanks being a natural defence to manufacture such dangerous explosives, which had in fact been in production since the early 1880s. There were countless tragic deaths connected to such a perilous job over the years, including a massive explosion back in 1882 killing 7 workers, During the outbreak of World War I, the majority of the workforce were women who were bravely enduring horrific conditions to produce the firepower required in the defence of our country. Conditions were so bad, there are accounts from the workers who would talk of the chemicals and fumes which would cause difficulties in breathing and even the discoloration of their skin due to the various chemicals. Countless others were brutally blinded, scarred and burnt carrying out their perilous work. Things got even worse. There were further explosions at the factory in 1917, tragically killing many of the brave workers. After World War I, the factory was closed down, and during the consequent years it was used as a convalescence home and rehabilitation centre. Leading up to World War II, the factory was reopened under the name of the Royal Ordnance Factory and was in fact the country's largest producer of TNT and other explosives. The factory was finally closed in 1965 after years of death and tragedy linked to the factory. Could those poor and unfortunate souls who perished in the numerous disasters still reside within the woodlands and surrounding areas of Pembrey? Tragedies in life are often one of the reasons why the spirits of the deceased are said to remain here in our world. There have been countless stories of visitors to the area seeing fleeting glimpses of apparitions appearing in the woods before vanishing in front of their very eyes. Now, whereas a small amount of reports do describe these sightings as women, the majority, however, allude to them of having the appearance of a sailor or wearing a uniform of sorts. Could this be linked to a barbaric practice that took place in the area which actually predates the munitions factory? When the lights of a ship shone on the horizon, some devious locals would grab their lanterns and their hatchets and head to the seafront. They would shine their lanterns to confuse the ship, which would then crash into the rocks and sink, unleashing its cargo into the waters. These little hatchet men, as the locals dubbed them, would then wait until the cargo and the corpses of the crew washed ashore, and they would then plunder them, using their hatchets to cut jewellery and other precious items from the dead. There are also stories of these men using their hatchets to kill any crew member who made it to the shore alive. People have often reported being close to the woods on the beach and seeing strange lights that seem to come from nowhere. These lights are often described as looking like a candlelight or a lantern light. The lights seem to move through the woods towards the beach, hover for a few moments before fading quietly away. Could it be that the spirits of the little hatchet men appear in the form of their lantern light, doomed to retrace the steps they took that caused the deaths of countless innocent sailors over the centuries? It is not just the lights on the shoreline that have been witnessed, however. It is known that on some winter nights a green glow comes from the horizon, and a great ship with torn sails can be seen, said to be manned by a crew of the dead. It is said that this ship was either a victim of the wreckers, or that it is a culmination of many sunken vessels that met their end on the shore of Pembrey Woods. It is not just ships that have met an unfortunate end here, as many air crashes happened in the same area, leading to the deaths of countless more unfortunate individuals. In fact, the ghostly figure of an airman has been seen wandering the woods over the years. Legend even goes as far as to say, if you glimpse the figure of this doomed soul, you too will meet an unfortunate demise in the not too distant future. There certainly seems to be an overwhelming negative energy attached to the area. With so much death and tragedy, could this perhaps have created an area of particularly paranormal activity, even acting as a magnet of sorts, drawing in more spirits and keeping them trapped? There are stories of forests and woods that hold bad energy all around the world. One in particular that has seen many tragic deaths over the years is the infamous Aokigahara forest in Japan. Known as the Sea of Trees, it has gained a tragic reputation, often being dubbed as the suicide forest in Japan. The dense and vast forest is located on the edge of Mount Fuji and has seen hundreds of people over the decades tragically take their own lives amongst the eerie surroundings. So much so that countless signs have been placed in the area advising visitors to seek help or speak to loved ones or professionals before attempting anything final. Could there be a dark force at work here that draws people to the area to end their lives? Or might it be that the forest has become a victim of its own legend? The forest itself is a naturally unnerving place, and visitors are advised to stay to the paths, as it is very easy to get lost and turned around. The ground itself, which is scattered with thick roots and small caves, has grown on top of dried lava that would have once flowed in the area. The high iron content in the ground and soil is also said to affect electrical devices such as mobile phones and tablets, causing signals to come and go erratically, something which might perhaps be misinterpreted as paranormal activity. A Japanese book published in the 1960s tells of a character heading to the forest to end their lives. Many have speculated that this, amongst many other forms of media, may have contributed to the forest's reputation to draw people in. However, others say it could also be linked to a legendary Japanese tradition, where an elderly or sick relative would be taken into an isolated location and left to die. The more recent media has stopped reporting the amount of suicides in fear that it could be mass hysteria drawing more people into the forest. However, regardless of what brought those tragic souls to the forest in the first place, such violent deaths can often leave a mark. It is not known how many people for certain have ended their lives in the forest, but an area that has seen so much death and tragedy is often said to hold on to a very dark and negative energy. Japanese folklorists say the forest is now haunted by the eerie, spirits unable to move on. The energy here becoming darker and darker with the more death it sees. The casual tourist visiting these fascinating woods have reported blood-curdling shrieks and screams echoing through the trees, and sinister figures that are said to call to them, beckoning them deeper into the forest, corrupting their minds with sinister intentions. It is not just in Japan where the forests can have an effect on how people feel. In Romania, there is a forest called Hoia Baciu, where there have been strange reports that even science cannot explain. Even before you have stepped foot among the tall, looming trees, you can see there is something different, something extraordinary about this forest. The trees here do not grow like anywhere else. They bend and twist at the base and then grow at an angle, giving them a unique but sinister look. There have been many studies and tests done on the trees over the years, yet none have been able to explain the reason behind the forest's strange growth pattern. If the look of the trees is not enough to create an unnerving feel to those who dare walk through, there is an oval-shaped clearing in the middle of the forest, a clearing that is not man-made. The clearing has no trees growing and no other vegetation around. It is a perfect clearing. Nothing, according to the locals, has ever grown there, and nothing ever will grow there. Scientists have run tests on the soil of this clearing to determine what makes it different to the rest of the forest and try to find out why nothing grows here. All these tests found nothing. There is no difference with the soil and no logical explanation as to why no trees grow here. The explanation may not be scientific, but extraterrestrial. In 1968, a local man was on the outskirts of the forest when he suddenly saw lights in the sky, glowing bright and moving around the clearing. The gentleman, who had luckily brought his camera, began to take pictures of these lights. They seemed to focus around the clearing and move down towards the ground and back up before circling the whole area. These photographs are easily viewed when making a quick internet search, and in true UFO photograph style they are grainy and unclear. As they were taken in 1968, the camera was not as clear and advanced as they are now. The images, although unclear, do show some kind of unidentified flying object seemingly focusing on the clearing in the forest. It may not just be aliens that have an interest in this eerie forest. People walking through have reported seeing fleeting glimpses of figures moving among the trees. Figures that seem to vanish as quickly as they appear. People have also reported suddenly having a feeling of anxiety that comes from out of nowhere and leaves many people wanting to leave immediately. Others have said they are walking along and are unexpectedly sick and have a strong feeling of nausea that does not leave them until they leave the forest. However, leaving the forest does not mean you are safe from the effects of this strange place. For a few days after, people have suffered from strange rashes that appear all over their body for no apparent reason. This forest has had many different phenomena occurring in it, and because of it, it remains a unique looking location and a scientific, baffling location also. Sometimes, the creepiest thing about a forest is something that is put there by man. In Mexico, there is an island forest that is called Isla de Lemuncas, the island of the dolls. This name is due to the fact that all over the trees there are dolls hanging in the branches. These dolls have been put there by locals and tourists alike. The origin of this tradition begins with a tragedy. A local legend says that a young girl was playing near the edge of the river when she fell in and was drowned. In honour of her, the groundskeeper hung her doll on the tree nearest to the river. However, this appeared to be a mistake, as the groundskeeper complained of being haunted by the spirit of the girl, begging him to give her more dolls to play with. When he hung other dolls in the forest, he thought the ghost would be appeased, but she continued to visit the poor man, asking for more dolls. It is said that the groundskeeper ended up drowning in the same spot as the poor girl, whose spirit he could not appease with the dolls. Since then, the ghost of the young girl has been seen fleetingly out of the corner of the eyes of visitors to the island. As a sign of respect, people continue to hang dolls in the trees for the girl to play with. It has been said that you can see which of the dolls the girl is playing with, as the eyes of the chosen ones will follow you around and the head will move to get a better view of you. The arms and legs will also move as if someone or something is playfully moving them around, as if they are walking around the island with you. One forest that has captured the imagination of children and adults alike is the Black Forest in Germany. This forest was the inspiration for the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, with its own tales of werewolves, witches, and even the devil himself lurking among the trees. This was the perfect location for stories such as Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, and Rapunzel. A dense forest with hidden areas and dark paths, where eyes watch you and wait for you to wander off the path and into the jaws. There are some forests where the strange entities that watch as you walk actually try to prevent you from leaving. In Gloddaith Woods, Llandudno, North Wales, there are stories of strange figures appearing among the trees, watching and waiting. One tale says there was a poacher roaming the woods one day. He was walking deeper and deeper into the trees. It wasn't long before he realised he was lost. He started to panic and in his rush stumbled into the branches of a tree and got stuck. Trying to calm down and free himself, he suddenly became aware he was not alone. In front of him stood a man he had never seen before. He was tall, naked, and his eyes were burning pools of fire. Terrified, the poacher froze, not wanting to stare at the figure, but too frightened to look away. As the hours passed and the darkness of night descended, the strange figure did not move. He did not speak, he just continued to stare at the poacher, trapped in the branches. All night the poacher was imprisoned in the woods, too scared to move. When dawn finally approached and the light of the new day appeared, the strange figure simply vanished in front of his eyes. Waiting until he was sure the demonic figure had truly gone, the poacher then struggled and freed himself from the binds of the branches. When he eventually found his way out of the woods and back to his home, he recounted his story to his friends and neighbours. Since that day, people have searched the woods for this mysterious figure, but none of them have seen him since. Well, no one that wants to admit to it, at least. Whether this figure was something demonic, a Tylwyth Teg, a ghost of a long-forgotten soul, or an extraterrestrial, we may never know. But even today, people wander the Gloddaith Woods in the hope of seeing the strange figure. From childhood, we are taught to beware of the forests of the world. Stories like Little Red Riding Hood and Hansel and Gretel teach us that the figures among the trees are no friends. With films like The Blair Witch Project, this fear of the forest continues into adulthood. The disorientating way the trees grow, the way the darkness takes hold, the lack of phone signal, all these contribute to a feeling of dread and worry when we find ourselves in the deep, dark woods. So, if you go down to the woods tonight, good luck. Until next time, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.